The scent of vanilla and warm butter was Alara's constant companion, a comforting cloak she wore from the moment the first hint of dawn touched the ancient cobblestones of Oakhaven Square. Her shop, the Sugar Scroll, was a beacon of warmth even before the sun fully climbed above the gnarled oak trees that gave the town its name. By 5 o'clock each morning, the faint clinking of ceramic bowls and the soft hiss of the industrial oven were the only sounds disturbing the pre-dawn hush, a symphony only Alara truly heard. Alara herself was a creature of quiet habits. Her movements were precise, her hands dusted perpetually with flour, her apron always clean despite the flurry of activity. Her dark brown hair, usually braided neatly and tucked away, had a tendency to escape in soft tendrils around her heart-shaped face. Her eyes, the color of warm honey, held a depth that spoke of dreams carefully tended and passions quietly pursued. She didn't speak much, preferring to let her creations do the talking. And oh, how they spoke. Her croissants, flaky and golden, whispered tales of Parisian mornings. Her lemon tarts sang with the bright zest of summer. Her chocolate babka, rich and swirled, hummed with comforting indulgence. Each pastry, each loaf of bread, was a miniature masterpiece, imbued with a piece of Alara's gentle soul. She believed that the best food wasn't just about ingredients and technique, it was about intention, about the silent hopes and joys poured into every stir, every knead, every delicate sprinkle of sugar. The Sugar Scroll wasn't just a bakery, it was a sanctuary. Its walls were painted a comforting shade of cream, adorned with quaint, framed illustrations of vintage baking tools and whimsical sugar scrolls. A long, worn wooden counter, polished smooth by countless elbows, displayed the day's offerings under soft, warm lighting. In the back, a small, cozy seating area invited patrons to linger over a cup of Alara's fragrant coffee, brewed from beans roasted right here in Oakhaven. It was a place where conversations were hushed, laughter was soft, and worries seemed to melt away with each bite of a perfect scone. Alara loved Oakhaven, this sleepy town nestled by the slow-moving Silken River. It was a place where time felt a little gentler, where people still knew their neighbors by name and took pride in their small independent businesses. She'd grown up here, learned to bake at her grandmother's knee, and inherited the Sugar Scroll from her with a heart full of trepidation and an even fuller heart of love. Her grandmother, a formidable woman named Agnes, had taught Alara not just the recipes, but the philosophy of baking, that it was an act of profound generosity, a way to connect with people when words often fail. And words, for Alara, often did fail. She wasn't shy in an awkward, stumbling way, but rather in a quiet, observant one. Her thoughts often felt like fragile butterflies, fluttering just beneath the surface, too delicate to capture and release into the bustling air of conversation. She worried that her true feelings, her deepest longings, were merely whispers, too soft to ever be heard above the everyday din. She poured all of that unspoken emotion into her baking, hoping that somehow, through the alchemy of flour and fire, it would reach people, touching their hearts in a way she couldn't with her voice. She lived above the bakery, in a small apartment that smelled perpetually of cinnamon and old books. Her windows overlooked Oakhaven Square, a patchwork of well-tended flower beds, and a central fountain that gurgled a constant soothing tune. From her perch, she watched the town awaken each morning and settle into slumber each night. She saw Mrs. Gable from the antique shop across the way water her window boxes, Mr. Henderson from the hardware store sweep his stoop, and the young couple who ran the flower shop next door share a quiet morning coffee on their bench. She felt a deep sense of belonging here, a comforting rootedness. Yet, there was a tiny persistent ache, a whisper of a desire for a different kind of connection, one that went beyond the unspoken understanding she shared with her loyal customers. It was a Tuesday when the first real stirrings of change began to ripple through Oakhaven. Not with a bang, but with a quiet hum of curiosity. For months, the old Oakhaven bookseller, a beloved but long-shuttered institution directly across the square from the Sugar Scroll, had stood empty and forlorn. Its windows were dusty, its for sale sign faded, its shelves visible through the grimy panes, looking like ghosts of stories past. The town had mourned its closing, a silent testament to the dwindling appreciation for physical books in a digital age. Then, a week prior, a new, crisp-soled sign had appeared. And on this Tuesday, a moving truck, surprisingly small and unostentatious, parked right outside the old bookstore. Alara watched from her bakery window as a figure emerged from the driver's seat. He was tall, with a lean build and hair the color of rich earth. He moved with an unhurried grace, his eyes, even from a distance, seeming to take in every detail of the square. He unlocked the dusty front door, and a faint, musty scent seemed to drift across the square, mingling with the sweet aroma from her ovens. The town buzzed with muted excitement. Mrs. Gable popped her head into the sugar scroll later that morning, her eyes bright. "Did you see, dear? The bookstore. Someone's finally bought it." Elara nodded, placing a freshly baked cranberry scone on the counter. "Yes, Mrs. Gable, I saw." "Such a handsome young man," Mrs. Gable continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Seems the quiet type, but a good sort, I'd wager." Over the next few days, Elara observed him from her shop window, a silent, curious spectator. He worked diligently, clearing out the old shelves, scrubbing the windows until they gleamed, allowing the sunlight to flood into the cavernous space. He wore comfortable jeans and soft, worn shirts, often with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. He'd occasionally pause, hands on hips, gazing out at the square, a thoughtful expression on his face. Sometimes, he'd pull out a small sketchbook and quickly jot something down, or make a swift, elegant drawing. Elara wondered if he was an artist, or perhaps a writer, finding inspiration in the quiet beauty of Oakhaven. She learned his name from Mrs. Gable, who always seemed to know everything. "Liam, dear. Liam Hayes. A designer, I hear. Moving here from the city for a quieter life, they say." Liam. Gosh. The name rolled around in Elara's mind, a soft, pleasant sound. He finally appeared in the sugar scroll on a crisp Friday morning, just as the last of the breakfast rush was dwindling. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful announcement, and Elara looked up from arranging a display of blueberry muffins. He stood just inside the doorway, a canvas tote bag slung over his shoulder, a polite smile on his lips. He was even taller up close, and his eyes, she noticed now, were a startling shade of green, like moss after a spring rain, flecked with gold. They held a serene calm, but also a spark of something she couldn't quite place, perhaps curiosity or a gentle wistfulness. His scent was subtle, a clean, earthy smell, perhaps of old paper and fresh air, entirely different from the sweet warmth of her bakery. "Good morning," he said, his voice a low, pleasant baritone that seemed to hum through the quiet space. "I hear this is the place to be for a good coffee and something delicious." Elara felt a faint blush creep up her neck. She pushed a stray tendril of hair behind her ear. "Good morning," she managed, her voice a little softer than usual. "Welcome to the sugar scroll." He walked slowly towards the counter, his gaze sweeping over the pastries, a genuine smile now gracing his features. "It smells incredible in here, truly, like warmth and happiness." His eyes met hers, and Elara felt a peculiar flutter in her chest, a feeling not unlike the moment a perfect soufflé began to rise. "You must be Elara." "I am," she confirmed, a little surprised he knew her name. "Liam Hayes," he offered, extending a hand over the counter. His grip was firm but gentle, his fingers long and artistic. "I'm the new owner of the bookstore across the square." "I know," Elara said, then immediately regretted how blunt it sounded. "I mean, I've seen you, working. It's wonderful that the bookstore is opening again." He chuckled, a soft, pleasant sound. "Thank you. It's been a project, but a good one. I'm hoping to bring it back to life, make it a hub for the community again." He gestured vaguely around her shop. "Something like what you've created here, a place where people feel at home." Elara felt a warmth spread through her, a quiet pride. "I try," she said simply. "What can I get for you, Liam?" He paused, his eyes lingering on a tray of her almond croissants, their golden brown tops glistening with sugar. "That looks magnificent. And a large coffee, please, black." As she moved to prepare his order, her movements, usually so fluid, felt a touch more self-conscious. She ground the coffee beans, the aroma filling the air, and carefully selected the best almond croissant, placing it on a small ceramic plate. She poured his coffee, the dark liquid steaming gently. "Here you go," she said, placing the plate and mug on the counter. He took a sip of the coffee, his eyes closing for a moment in appreciation. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." Then he took a bite of the croissant. His eyes widened slightly, and a sound of pure contentment escaped him. "Oh, Elara, this is art. It's like a symphony of butter and almond. How do you do it?" Alara felt her cheeks flush again. She didn't know how to explain the hours of meticulous folding and chilling, the careful balance of ingredients, the silent prayers she whispered over each batch. "It's a family recipe," she murmured, a small shy smile playing on her lips. He nodded slowly, savoring another bite. "Well, your family has a secret worth guarding. I think I've found my new morning ritual." He paid, his fingers brushing hers briefly as he took the change. The touch sent a surprising jolt through her. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He lingered for a moment, his gaze soft. "No, thanking you, Alara, for this, and for being here." He gave her a small, genuine smile, then turned and found a quiet table by the window. He sat down, pulled out his sketchbook, and began to draw, occasionally taking a sip of coffee or a bite of his croissant, a picture of quiet contentment. Alara watched him from behind the counter, a strange new feeling blooming in her chest, warm and delicate, like yeast activating. It wasn't just the compliment, though that was lovely. It was the way he looked at her, the way he genuinely appreciated her work, the quiet understanding in his eyes. He didn't seem to demand explanations or verbose replies. He seemed to appreciate the quiet. Over the next few weeks, Liam became a regular fixture in the sugar scroll. Every morning, around the same time, the bell would chime, and he would enter, offering a soft "Good morning, Alara." He always ordered the same thing: a large black coffee and an almond croissant, sometimes a pain au chocolat on Fridays. He would sit at the same table by the window, sketching in his book, occasionally looking up to observe the square or to offer a small, encouraging smile to a customer. He never stayed long, usually just long enough to finish his coffee and pastry, but his presence was a comforting anchor in her morning. She started to notice small things about him: the way his brow furrowed in concentration when he sketched, the faint scent of charcoal that sometimes clung to his clothes, the way he always left his ceramic mug precisely aligned with the edge of the table. One rainy afternoon, when the bakery was particularly quiet, Liam came in, not for coffee, but with a small, carefully wrapped package. "Alara," he said, stepping up to the counter. "I wanted to give you this." He handed her the package. "A small thank you for the best croissants in Oakhaven, and for making me feel so welcome." Alara's hands trembled slightly as she took the package. It was wrapped in simple brown paper, tied with twine. "Oh, Liam, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he insisted, his green eyes warm. "Go on, open it." She carefully peeled back the paper. Inside was a beautifully bound notebook, its cover made of rich forest green leather. The pages were thick and creamy, unlined. On the front, subtly embossed, was a delicate illustration of a sugar scroll, almost identical to the one on her shop's signage. Alara gasped softly. "Liam, this is beautiful. You drew this?" He nodded, a slight flush on his cheeks. "I did. I thought it might be useful. Or just a pretty place to jot down new recipes." She traced the embossed design with a reverent finger. It was exquisitely detailed, capturing the whimsical curl and sweetness of her shop's emblem. "It's perfect," she whispered, her heart swelling with an emotion she couldn't quite name. It was the most thoughtful gift anyone had given her in years, a silent acknowledgement of her passion, of heartwarming. "I'm glad you like it," he said, his smile genuine. "I saw your logo and thought it was lovely. And you pour so much of yourself into your work, Alara. It deserves a beautiful space to grow, even if it's just on paper." She looked up at him, her honey-colored eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "Truly, thank you." He simply smiled, a comfortable silence settling between them. "I should get back, still unpacking boxes of forgotten stories." He gestured towards the square. "But I'll see you tomorrow morning." "Yes," she said, clutching the notebook to her chest. "Tomorrow." As he left, the chime of the bell seemed to sing a little louder, a happy melody. Alara stood there for a long moment, the scent of vanilla, and now, a faint hint of leather and paper mingling in the air. She opened the notebook, her fingers brushing the smooth, inviting pages. A place for new recipes, he'd said. But perhaps, she thought, a place for other things too. For the quiet thoughts, the unspoken dreams, the whispers of her heart that she hadn't dared to write down before. A new kind of warmth had settled into Oakhaven, one that wasn't just from her ovens. It was a gentle, budding connection, a soft murmur of possibility that had begun to bloom across the square. And Ilara, for the first time in a long time, felt a flicker of hope that her whispers might, just might, finally find someone to truly hear them. The next morning, as Ilara kneaded the first batch of dough, the scent of yeast and flour rising around her like a comforting hug, her thoughts drifted across the square. She pictured the tall, arched windows of the Bound Bean, Liam Thorne's bookshop and coffee haven. He was usually there by now, arranging the new arrivals, the gentle clatter of ceramic mugs likely already echoing from within. Her hope wasn't a dazzling, blinding light, but a soft, persistent glow, like the pilot light of her oven, always ready to ignite something warmer. She found herself humming a quiet tune, a melody she hadn't hummed in years, as she meticulously brushed egg wash over a tray of croissants. The bakery felt lighter, imbued with a subtle new energy. When the bell above the door chimed, announcing her first customer, her heart gave an unexpected little flutter. It wasn't Liam, but Mrs. Gable, a regular with a penchant for apple tarts. Still, the anticipation lingered, a sweet undercurrent to her day. It wasn't until late afternoon, when the bakery was quieter, the rush subsided, that Liam finally appeared. He wasn't carrying a stack of books or a takeaway cup, but a small, carefully wrapped package. The scent of roasted coffee beans, a faint, pleasant aroma, seemed to precede him. He moved with a quiet grace, his eyes, the color of warm amber, finding hers instantly. A smile, easy and genuine, touched his lips, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low, melodic rumble that always seemed to cut through the bakery's gentle hum. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Never," she replied, her own voice softer than she intended, a warmth spreading through her cheeks. "Just finishing up a batch of sourdough. What brings you over?" He held out the package. "A small thank you for the cardamom rolls yesterday. They were exceptional, a perfect accompaniment to my morning coffee. I thought you might appreciate these." Ilara took the package. It was heavier than she expected, wrapped in thick brown paper tied with twine. "Oh, you really didn't have to," she murmured, a genuine blush rising. "It's just what I do." "And you do it beautifully," he insisted, his gaze steady and appreciative. "Open it. I think you'll like it." With careful fingers, Ilara untied the twine and peeled back the paper. Inside, nestled in tissue, was a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover was a deep forest green, and the paper within felt thick and creamy to the touch. It was exactly like the kind she always admired but rarely allowed herself to buy, deeming them too luxurious for her everyday notes. "Liam," she breathed, tracing the delicate stitching on the spine. It's perfect. How did you know?" He chuckled softly. "You have a certain reverence for beautiful paper, Ilara. I've noticed the care you take with your order forms, even the little notes you sometimes leave on the counter for your early morning delivery drivers. And besides," he added, his voice dropping slightly, "I remembered you mentioning wanting a fresh start for your thoughts." Her heart skipped, a tiny, joyous leap. He remembered. He had listened, truly listened, to a passing comment she'd made weeks ago about needing a new notebook. It was such a small detail, yet it spoke volumes. It felt like he saw her, not just the baker, but Ilara, the woman who harbored quiet thoughts and unspoken dreams. "Thank you," she said again, meeting his gaze, her gratitude shining in her eyes. "It means a lot." "My pleasure," he replied, and for a moment, they simply stood there, a comfortable silence settling between them, filled with unspoken understanding. The scent of warm bread and roasting coffee mingled in the air, a perfect symphony of their respective worlds. "Would you like a coffee?" she offered, surprising herself with the boldness of the invitation. "Or a fresh sourdough roll? It's still warm." He smiled, a gentle warmth radiating from him. "A coffee would be lovely if you have the time. And perhaps a quiet corner to enjoy it?" Ilara led him to the small, sun-drenched nook by the window, usually reserved for her own brief breaks. She brewed 2 mugs of her strong, dark coffee, the rich aroma filling the air, and sliced a thick piece of the still warm sourdough, offering it with a small dish of her homemade berry jam data. As they sat, the afternoon light painting stripes across the wooden floor, Liam recounted a humorous anecdote about a particularly enthusiastic customer who had tried to pay for a book with a handful of wild berries, convinced they were currency from a forgotten era. Ilara laughed, a genuine, uninhibited sound that surprised even herself. She found herself sharing a story about a mischievous squirrel who regularly attempted to raid her outdoor cooling racks, leading to a long-running, good-natured battle of wits. Their conversation flowed easily, unhurried and pleasant, touching on books, the changing seasons in Oakhaven, and the particular joys and challenges of running a small business. Ilara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of being truly present, truly seen. Liam listened intently when she spoke, his gaze warm and steady, making her feel like every word she uttered was important. He didn't interrupt, but offered thoughtful comments, drawing her out gently. When he finally rose to leave, the sun dipping lower and casting long shadows, Ilara felt a pang of something akin to regret. "Thank you for the journal, Liam," she said, clutching the beautiful green book to her chest. "And for the company." "Thank you, Ilara," he said, his hand lingering for a moment on the doorframe. "I enjoyed it immensely. Perhaps we could make this a regular occurrence?" "I'd like that very much," she agreed, her smile bright and genuine. After he left, the bakery felt empty, but not in a desolate way. It was filled instead with the echo of his laughter, the warmth of his presence, and the lingering scent of his coffee. Ilara carried the journal to her small office, her heart still humming. She ran her fingers over the smooth leather, the green reminding her of the ancient oaks that gave Oakhaven its name. This wasn't just a notebook. It was a tangible symbol of connection, a gentle nudge towards the whispers of her heart. Over the next few weeks, their regular occurrence blossomed. Liam would often stop by Ilara's bakery in the late afternoon, sometimes with a new book he thought she might enjoy, other times just for a quiet chat over coffee and a freshly baked treat. Ilara, in turn, found herself making excuses to visit the Bound Bean. She needed a new cookbook, or a novel for a quiet evening, or simply a moment to bask in the comforting scent of old paper and roasted beans. She learned that Liam had moved to Oakhaven 5 years ago, seeking a slower pace after years in a bustling city. He spoke of the quiet satisfaction of matching a reader with the perfect book, the joy of seeing children discover the magic of stories. He had a deep appreciation for the unhurried rhythms of small-town life, much like Ilara. They found common ground in their shared love for quiet corners, the simple beauty of a well-made thing, and the subtle magic that could be found in everyday moments. One crisp autumn afternoon, a few weeks after the journal exchange, Liam arrived at the bakery with a faint smudge of ink on his cheek and an unusual glint in his eye. "Ilara," he began, "I have a proposition for you." She looked up from arranging a display of pumpkin spice muffins, a playful smile on her lips. "A proposition? Sounds intriguing. Is it about a forgotten manuscript or a secret society of bakers?" He chuckled. "Nothing so dramatic, I assure you. The Oakhaven Harvest Festival is coming up next month. You know, the one where everyone sets up stalls in the square? And there's the big bake-off." Ilara nodded. "Of course. I usually enter a pie or two. It's a nice way to connect with the community." "Well," Liam continued, running a hand through his slightly tousled hair, "the Bound Bean usually has a small stall, selling some seasonal reeds and hot cider, but this year, I was thinking, your baked goods are legendary, Ilara. People line up for them. What if we shared a stall? You could sell your harvest-themed treats and I could offer books, bakes, and brews or something equally charming." Ilara considered it. It was a bold idea, stepping out of the comfortable familiarity of her own shop. She usually preferred the quiet anonymity of her bakery, but the thought of spending an entire day side by side with Liam, sharing the festive energy of the square, a warmth spread through her chest. "It sounds wonderful, Liam," she admitted, her gaze meeting his. "A little daunting, perhaps, but wonderful." "We'd be a great team," he assured her, his enthusiasm infectious. "You're baking my books. It's a perfect pairing. We could even collaborate on a special story-themed pastry, something inspired by a classic tale." The idea sparked something within Ilara. She imagined miniature apple pies named Snow White's Delights or spiced shortbread hobbit hole biscuits. Her creativity, often confined to the familiar recipes, began to bubble with new possibilities. "All right," she said, a smile blooming across her face. "I'm in, but you'll have to help me with the story-themed part. My literary knowledge isn't quite as extensive as yours." "It would be my absolute pleasure," he replied, his eyes alight with genuine pleasure. "We can meet at the Bound Bean one evening next week, after your bakery closes, to brainstorm ideas, I can even offer you some of my famous spiced chai. I'd like that very much, Alara repeated, the same words she'd used weeks ago, but this time they felt imbued with a deeper meaning. The prospect of spending focused, creative time with Liam, of building something together, filled her with a quiet excitement. The following Tuesday evening, Alara locked up her bakery and walked across the square, the crisp autumn air invigorating her. The lights of the Bound Bean glowed invitingly, a warm beacon in the twilight. Liam was waiting, the scent of cinnamon and cloves already wafting from within. He had set up a cozy corner by a towering bookshelf, two comfortable armchairs pulled up to a low table laden with steaming mugs of chai and a plate of shortbread. Her shortbread, she noted with a fond smile. Classical music played softly in the background, a gentle accompaniment to the rustle of turning pages and the murmur of conversation. They spent hours talking, not just about the festival, but about everything and nothing. Liam shared anecdotes from his favorite authors, reading passages aloud in his rich, expressive voice. Alara, in turn, found herself opening up about her grandmother, the woman who had taught her to bake, sharing memories of flour-dusted hands and whispered family recipes. It was a conversation that delved deeper than any they had shared before, peeling back layers of their carefully constructed lives. My grandmother always said, Alara mused, stirring her chai, that baking wasn't just about ingredients and measurements. It was about love, about putting a piece of your heart into everything you made. She believed that food had a way of speaking to people, of telling stories without words. Liam looked at her, his expression soft and thoughtful. I think she was right, and I think you carry on that tradition beautifully, Alara. Every time I taste one of your pastries, it feels like a little piece of comfort, a story told in flavor. His words resonated deeply within her, touching a place she rarely allowed others to access. It wasn't just a compliment. It was an acknowledgement of the invisible threads she wove into her work, the quiet passion she poured into every loaf and tart. And your books, she countered, her gaze sweeping around the shelves, they do the same, don't they? Each one a story waiting to be told, waiting to be discovered. You connect people to those stories. He smiled, a genuine heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. Perhaps we're more alike than we thought, Alara. Both purveyors of comfort and stories, just in different forms. They began to brainstorm ideas for their festival stall, the energy between them palpable. How about a Mad Hatter's Tea Party cupcake? Alara suggested, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. Or a rich, dark chocolate cake called the Raven's Midnight Slice. Liam's eyes lit up. And I could pair it with a collection of Edgar Allan Poe's tales. This is brilliant, Alara. Absolutely brilliant. As the evening wore on, the chai mugs emptied and the plate of shortbread crumbs, they decided on a theme: enchanted edibles and literary lore. They sketched out a small, whimsical menu, pairing pastries with classic literary works. They even talked about the aesthetics of the stall, envisioning fairy lights, autumn leaves, and perhaps a comfortable armchair for weary festival goers. When Alara finally stood to leave, it was well past midnight. The square was deserted, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. A gentle mist had settled, giving Oak Haven a dream-like quality. Thank you, Liam, she said, pausing at the threshold of his shop, her heart full. Tonight it was truly lovely. It was, he agreed, stepping out with her, the cool night air wrapping around them. I enjoyed every moment. It's rare to find someone who understands the quiet magic of things. He walked her across the square, to her bakery, the silence between them comfortable and warm. As they reached her door, he paused, turning to face her. The streetlight cast his features in soft relief, highlighting the kindness in his eyes. Alara, he began, his voice a low murmur. There's something I wanted to say. Her heart fluttered, a nervous anticipation taking root. She waited, her gaze locked with his. The quiet of the night amplifying the moment. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray curl from her cheek, a touch that sent a shiver of warmth through her. I've enjoyed getting to know you, more than I can express. You have a way of seeing the world and of making it a little brighter, a little sweeter, just by being in it. Alara felt a blush creep up her neck, her breath catching in her throat. His words were like a balm to her soul, affirming the very whispers she had recently dared to write in her new green journal. Liam, she managed, her voice barely a whisper. She wanted to say so much, to tell him how much his presence had begun to mean to her, how he had awakened a sense of possibility she hadn't known she still possessed. But the words seemed to catch in her throat, too big, too fragile for the quiet night. He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile, as if he could read the unspoken thoughts dancing in her eyes. "Good night, Alara. Dream sweetly." He leaned in, his warmth momentarily enveloping her, and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. It was a chaste, tender gesture, but it sent a cascade of warmth through her, settling deep in her heart. Before she could fully process the moment, he had stepped back, a final lingering look exchanged before he turned and walked back across the square to the bound bean, his figure disappearing into the gentle mist. Alara stood there for a long moment, her fingers rising to touch the spot where his lips had been. The quiet magic of the night, infused with the scent of old books and fresh bread, swirled around her. She unlocked her bakery door, stepping inside, but her mind was still out in the square, replaying the gentle touch, the soft words, the unexpected kiss. She didn't write in her journal that night. Instead, she sat by her window, looking out at the faint glow from the bound bean, a small smile playing on her lips. Her heart, once a quiet, carefully guarded place, felt wide open, filled with a sweet, blossoming joy. The Harvest Festival was still weeks away, but the anticipation of building something beautiful with Liam, of sharing stories and warmth, and perhaps something even deeper, felt like the most wonderful adventure she could imagine. The whispers of her heart were no longer just whispers. They were beginning to sing. The next morning, Alara woke with a feeling of lightness she hadn't known was possible. The memory of Liam's kiss, soft and unexpected, lingered like the scent of vanilla in her bakery. She had dreamt of fairy lights and autumn leaves, of hushed conversations and shared laughter. Getting out of bed, she moved with a renewed spring in her step, the silence of her home no longer feeling quite so empty. As she mixed her sourdough starter, Alara found herself smiling into the dough. The bakery, usually a place of solitary focus, now felt infused with the possibility of connection. She thought of the enchanted edibles and literary lore stall they were planning. It wasn't just a stall, it was a shared canvas, a space where their two worlds, her baking and his books, would intertwine. This wasn't just about business, it was about building something together, a shared vision that felt deeply personal. Later that week, Liam stopped by the bakery, not in the late afternoon, but during her mid-morning rush. The bell chimed, and he entered, bringing with him the subtle aroma of old paper and a fresh crispness from the autumn air. He carried a small leather-bound book. "Alara," he greeted, his eyes sparkling as he navigated the small line of customers. "I couldn't wait until our next brainstorming session. I found the perfect inspiration for our Mad Hatter's Tea Party cupcake." He held up the book, a beautifully illustrated edition of Alice in Wonderland. The imagery, the whimsy, I think it will translate wonderfully. Ilara's heart warmed at his eagerness, at the way he shared his excitement so openly. "Oh, Liam, it's beautiful. And you're right, the colors alone are inspiring. We could do little edible playing cards or tiny teacups." Her imagination was already soaring. He stayed for a moment longer than necessary, his gaze lingering on her face. "You look particularly radiant today, Alara," he murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear it amidst the general bakery chatter. "Did you sleep well?" A blush crept up her neck, and she met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Better than I have in a long time, thank you," she confessed, her voice equally soft. He smiled, a private, knowing smile that made her feel seen and cherished. "Good. I'm glad. I'll leave this with you then. I have a feeling those cupcakes are going to be truly magical." With a final lingering look, he turned and left, leaving Alara with a hum in her heart and the beautiful book clutched in her hand. The customers, oblivious to the quiet exchange, continued their orders, but for Alara, the day had already taken on a brighter hue. The days leading up to the Harvest Festival became a joyful whirlwind of activity. Alara immersed herself in her kitchen, experimenting with new recipes, infusing her usual perfectionism with a playful new energy. She designed delicate curiouser and curiouser vanilla cupcakes with tiny edible teacups and playing cards, rich Raven's Midnight Slice dark chocolate cakes, and whimsical Hobbit Hole spiced shortbread. Each creation felt like a small act of love, a delicious story waiting to be told. Liam, meanwhile, was equally busy. He curated a special selection of autumnal and fantastical books, designed a charming sign for their stall, and even fashioned small rustic wooden stands for Alara's pastries. They met often, sometimes at the Bound Bean, sometimes at Alara's bakery, to discuss logistics, share ideas, and simply enjoy each other's company. These meetings, ostensibly about the festival, became opportunities for deeper connection. They shared meals, talked about their dreams, and confessed small, endearing quirks. Alara learned that Liam had a secret passion for vintage maps, and Liam discovered Alara's surprisingly extensive collection of quirky garden gnomes. One evening, as they were meticulously arranging books on a display table in Liam's shop, Alara paused, picking up a well-worn copy of a classic romance novel. "Do you ever read these?" she asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Liam chuckled, a warm, melodic sound. "Sometimes. There's a certain comfort in the predictability, isn't there? The promise of a happy ending." He looked at her then, his gaze thoughtful. "But I think the best love stories aren't always found in books. Sometimes, they're written in the quiet moments, the shared glances, the simple kindnesses of everyday life." Alara's heart gave a gentle tug. His words felt like a soft caress, a recognition of the budding story unfolding between them. "I think you're right," she whispered, meeting his gaze. "The best ones are the ones you live yourself." He reached out, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on the book. His touch was warm and reassuring, sending a familiar shiver through her. Exactly. The day of the harvest festival dawned crisp and clear, the air smelling of wood smoke and damp earth. The square was a hive of activity, transforming into a vibrant tapestry of colorful stalls, twinkling lights, and the joyful buzz of the community. Alara arrived early, her bakery van laden with trays of carefully boxed pastries. Liam was already there, setting up their shared stall. "Morning, Lara," he called out, his smile bright and welcoming. He wore a thick forest green sweater that matched the color of her journal, and his eyes, amber in the morning light, seemed to hold an extra sparkle. Together, they transformed their corner of the square into a little haven of enchanted edibles and literary lore. Fairy lights strung across the top of their canopy cast a magical glow. Liam's books, arranged artfully, invited passers-by to browse. Alara's pastries, displayed on rustic wooden crates adorned with autumn leaves, looked like edible jewels. The scent of cinnamon, cardamom, and roasted coffee mingled delightfully. As the festival officially opened, a steady stream of people flocked to their stall. Children gasped at the curiouser and curiouser cupcakes, their eyes wide with wonder. Adults admired the artistry of Alara's Raven's midnight slice and eagerly discussed literary recommendations with Liam. Alara found herself laughing more than she had in years, her cheeks aching from smiling. Liam was a natural engaging customers with his easy charm and deep knowledge of books. He often pointed customers towards her pastries, extolling their virtues with a genuine enthusiasm that made Alara's heart swell. "You really are a wonder, Alara," he murmured once, leaning closer as a momentary lull settled between customers. "Look at this. Everyone loves your creations." "Only because you sell them so well," she countered, her gaze meeting his. "You make everyone feel like they're discovering a hidden treasure." Their eyes held for a moment, a silent current of appreciation and affection passing between them amidst the cheerful chaos of the festival. It felt natural, being side by side, working together, their energies complementing each other perfectly. Throughout the day, little moments accumulated, weaving themselves into the fabric of their shared experience. Liam would discreetly slip Alara a cup of hot spiced cider when he noticed her hands were cold. Alara would save him a particularly perfect Hobbit whole shortbread when she knew he hadn't had a proper break. They shared whispered jokes over the heads of customers, their laughter blending with the festive music. As evening descended, casting a warm, golden glow over the square, the crowds began to thin. Most of their pastries were gone, and Liam's book stacks were noticeably smaller. A sense of quiet contentment settled over them as they began the slow process of packing up. "We did it," Alara said, her voice a little tired but filled with satisfaction. "It was a huge success, Liam." "It was," he agreed, smiling at her, his eyes warm in the fading light. "More than I could have hoped for. And not just because of the sales." He reached out, gently taking her hand. His fingers interlaced with hers, a simple, comforting gesture. "Spending the day with you, Alara, seeing you shine, it was the best part." Her heart fluttered, a familiar warmth spreading through her. She squeezed his hand, unable to articulate the depth of her own feelings, the quiet joy that filled her. The day had been magical, not just because of the festival, but because of him. As the last of their things were packed into their respective vehicles, the square emptied around them, leaving only the lingering scent of wood smoke and the gentle hum of the streetlights. Liam walked Elara to her van, still holding her hand. "Are you tired?" he asked, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. "A little," she admitted, "but it's a good tired. A happy tired." He nodded, his gaze tender. "I feel the same. This whole day. It felt right, didn't it? Like we were exactly where we were supposed to be." Elara looked up at him, her heart overflowing. "It did, Liam, more than anything." He leaned in, and this time, there was no hesitation. His lips met hers, softly at first, a gentle exploration, then deepening with a quiet tenderness that took her breath away. It was a kiss that tasted of cinnamon and cider, of shared laughter and unspoken hopes, of the quiet magic they had built together. It was a kiss that spoke of promises, of a future unfolding. When they finally broke apart, Elara felt a delicious dizziness, her cheeks flushed, her breath coming in soft gasps. Liam's eyes, soft and luminous in the dim light, held a depth of emotion that mirrored her own. "Elara," he murmured, his voice husky. He didn't say anything more, but his gaze, full of warmth and affection, spoke volumes. She simply leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder for a moment, feeling the solid strength of him, the comforting rhythm of his breath. In that quiet embrace, surrounded by the echoes of a joyful day, Elara knew, with a certainty that settled deep into her bones, that the whispers of her heart had not only been heard, but were now being answered, gently, beautifully, by Liam. The story of Oakhaven, of her bakery, and of her own quiet dreams, had just begun a brand new, wonderful chapter. The gentle pressure of his hand on her back was a silent promise, and Elara's heart, usually a quiet whisper, now hummed a joyful tune. She leaned into him, feeling the steady beat beneath her ear, the subtle scent of sawdust and fresh air that was uniquely Liam. It was a moment suspended in time, perfect in its simplicity, a quiet affirmation that the most profound connections often bloomed in the most unexpected corners of life. When they finally stirred, it was with a shared reluctance. Liam's hand moved from her back to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing a soft path along her jawline. His eyes, the color of warm earth, held a tenderness that made Elara's breath catch. "You had an incredible day, Elara," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that resonated deep within her. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "We did. Thank you, Liam. For everything." He simply nodded, his gaze unwavering, and for a long moment, they simply looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them that spoke volumes more than words ever could. It was a promise of more days, more shared moments, more quiet understandings. The next morning, the bakery was still permeated with the lingering sweetness of the festival. Elara arrived early, the faint scent of cinnamon and sugar welcoming her like an old friend. She found Liam already there, clearing away the last of the outdoor tables, his movements efficient and strong. He wore a worn denim shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, and his dark hair was slightly tousled. "Morning," he said, turning with a smile that softened the rugged planes of his face. "Thought I'd get a head start. You must be exhausted." Elara felt a wave of warmth wash over her. It wasn't just his presence, but his thoughtfulness. "A little," she admitted, "but it's a good kind of tired. And thank you, you really don't have to." "I know," he replied, his gaze meeting hers, "but I want to." That simple statement settled in Elara's heart, warm and comforting. He wanted to be there. They shared a quiet breakfast of leftover pastries and strong coffee, the early morning light filtering through the bakery windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. They talked about the festival's success, the surprising turnout, the plans for Oakhaven Bakes now that it had truly found its footing. "It's going to be busy," Elara mused, stirring her coffee. "I think I might actually need to hire someone part-time." Liam nodded. "That's a good problem to have. You've worked incredibly hard for this, Elara." His belief in her, in the bakery, in Oakhaven, was a steadying force. Over the next few weeks, Liam didn't leave. His original project was complete, but he found other small jobs around town, fixing a leaky roof for Mrs. Henderson, repairing the old swing set at the town park. Each evening, he would often find his way to the bakery, sometimes just for a coffee, sometimes to help Alara close up, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the crisp autumn air. Their dates were simple, unpretentious, and utterly perfect. Long walks along the creek, where the leaves were beginning to turn vibrant shades of crimson and gold, their hands brushing accidentally, then intentionally, intertwining. Picnics by the old maple tree on Miller's Hill, sharing sandwiches and stories, the quiet hum of nature their only accompaniment. Evenings spent on Ilara's porch, watching the stars emerge, sharing silences that were more intimate than any conversation. Ilara found herself falling deeper into the quiet rhythm of their connection. Liam was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He remembered her favorite kind of tea, the way she liked her coffee, the small details that made her feel seen and cherished. He listened intently when she spoke about her dreams for the bakery, about the history of Oakhaven, about her parents. It was during one such evening, curled on the sofa by the crackling fireplace in her small living room above the bakery, that Ilara finally opened up about her past. The firelight danced across their faces, casting them in warm hues. "My parents," she began, her voice soft. "They built Oakhaven Bakes from the ground up. It was their dream, their legacy." A wistful smile touched her lips. They were the heart of this town, always baking, always welcoming. Liam squeezed her hand, a silent invitation to continue. When they passed away a few years ago suddenly," she continued, her voice catching slightly. "It felt like a piece of Oakhaven died with them. And then the bakery became this monument to their absence. I came back, of course, because it was family, but I was so scared, Liam. Scared I couldn't live up to it. Scared I'd fail, scared of losing it too, just like I lost them." Her gaze met his, vulnerable and raw. "I think, for a long time, I just kept it going. But I didn't truly invest myself. I held back, afraid to love it as much as they did. Because what if it was taken away from me too?" Liam listened, his expression gentle, his eyes reflecting the firelight. When she finished, he didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he simply pulled her closer, resting his chin on her head. "You haven't failed, Ilara. You've brought it back to life. You haven't lost it. You've made it your own. Your parents would be incredibly proud. And anyone who walks through those doors, they don't just feel the legacy of your parents, they feel Ji, your warmth, your passion. You Gare Oakhaven Bakes, just as much as they were." His words were a balm to a wound she hadn't realized was still so open. They were the permission she hadn't known she needed to truly claim her place, to fully embrace the dream that was now unequivocally hers. In turn, Liam slowly began to reveal glimpses of his own story. He was a skilled carpenter and contractor, a man who found solace and purpose in the tangible act of creation, of building and repairing. He'd traveled quite a bit, taking on projects that called to him, never staying in one place for too long. "My family. They weren't much for roots," he explained one evening, watching the stars from Ilara's porch swing. "Always moving, always chasing the next opportunity, or sometimes just running from the last one. I learned to build, to fix things, because it was something concrete, something I could rely on when everything else felt transient." "You never settled down?" Ilara asked, her voice soft. He shook his head, a faint shadow crossing his face. "Almost did once, in a different town with someone else. We had plans, but it fell apart. Turns out building a house is a lot easier than building a life with someone who isn't truly in it with you." He paused, a long silence stretching between them, filled only by the chirping of crickets. "After that, I just kept moving. Easier that way, less to lose." Ilara reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. She understood that quiet fear of loss, of investing oneself only to be left with emptiness. But looking at Liam, at his steady gaze and the solid strength of his hand in hers, she knew he wasn't running anymore. He was building something here, with her. Oakhaven Bakes truly flourished. Ilara hired a bright, enthusiastic local girl named Lily, who quickly learned the ropes and added a youthful energy to the bakery. The aroma of freshly baked bread, sweet pastries, and robust coffee became a constant, welcoming presence in the heart of the town. People gathered not just for the delicious treats, but for the warm atmosphere, for Ilara's gentle smile, and for the growing sense of community that she, and now Liam, fostered. One crisp November morning, A small cloud appeared on their horizon. Liam received a call, a major project, a challenging restoration of an old lighthouse on the coast, several hours' drive away. It was the kind of work he thrived on, the kind that had defined his life before Oakhaven. He discussed it with Ilara over a late dinner, the flickering candlelight casting a soft glow on his thoughtful face. "It's a big one, Ilara," he said, tracing patterns on the tablecloth. 3, maybe 4 months minimum, and it would take me away. Ilara felt a familiar pang in her chest, a tightening fear she thought she'd finally overcome. The old fear of people leaving, of being left alone, resurfaced. She imagined Oakhaven without Liam's quiet presence, the bakery without his reassuring visits, her evenings without his company. The thought was a hollow ache. She took a deep breath, determined not to let her fear dictate her words. "It sounds like incredible work, Liam. A real challenge, something you're so good at." She tried to keep her voice steady, but a tremor betrayed her. "What are you going to do?" He looked up, his gaze searching hers. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice rough. It's a part of me, that kind of work. The open road, the big projects, but this." He gestured vaguely around them, encompassing the cozy bakery, the quiet town, Ilara herself. "This feels like home in a way nothing ever has before." The word home hung in the air, weighted with unspoken meaning. Ilara's heart soared, even as her fear lingered. She knew she couldn't ask him to give up a part of himself for her, but she desperately hoped he wouldn't. "You have to do what's right for you, Liam," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I wouldn't want you to resent staying or regret leaving." He reached across the table, taking her hands in his. His grip was firm, reassuring. "My heart is telling me what's right, Ilara. I just need to figure out how to make it work." The next few days were filled with a quiet tension. Ilara tried to focus on the bakery, on the upcoming holiday season, but her mind kept drifting to Liam, to his decision. She saw him deep in thought, making calls, sketching designs on scraps of paper. He seemed torn, and it pained her to see him wrestle with such a choice. Then, one rainy afternoon, he walked into the bakery, a determined glint in his eyes. He found Ilara kneading dough, flour dusting her hands and apron. He leaned against the counter, watching her for a moment. "I called them back," he said, his voice calm, but with an underlying current of resolve. Ilara paused, her heart pounding. "And?" "I told them I couldn't take the project," he said simply. Ilara's hands stilled. She looked at him, disbelief and overwhelming relief warring within her. "Liam, are you sure? That was a huge opportunity." He pushed off the counter, walking around to stand beside her. He took her flour-dusted hands in his thumbs gently wiping away some of the white powder. "It was, but it meant leaving here, leaving you, and I realized that's not what I want anymore. The open road, the next big project. It was always about searching for something, and I think I've found it here, Ilara, with you." He looked into her eyes, his own filled with a depth of emotion that took her breath away. "I'm tired of building things for other people in other places, only to walk away. I want to build a life here, with you, if you'll have me." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, hot and sweet. This was it. This was the answer to all her quiet whispers, to the deepest longings of her heart. He wasn't just staying, he was choosing her, choosing Oakhaven, choosing a shared future. "Oh, Liam," she whispered, a sob catching in her throat. She threw her floury arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." He held her close, his embrace strong and solid, grounding her. The scent of flour and bread and Liam filled her senses, a perfect blend of everything she cherished. The decision was made, and with it, a new sense of purpose settled over them both. Liam didn't just stay in Oakhaven, he invested in it. He found an old, run-down cottage on the edge of town, nestled among some ancient oak trees, and started to meticulously restore it. It became his new project, a labor of love that Ilara often joined him on, offering ideas for colors, helping with sanding, or simply bringing him fresh coffee and pastries. The cottage slowly transformed, brick by brick, board by board, into a warm, inviting home. It was filled with the scent of freshly cut wood and the promise of a shared future. They spent their evenings there, planning, dreaming, talking about everything and nothing. They cooked simple meals together, the sounds of their laughter echoing in the newly refurbished rooms. One snowy evening, as the first flakes of winter danced outside the cottage windows, they sat by the newly installed fireplace, mugs of hot chocolate warming their hands. The cottage was almost complete, filled with the soft glow of fairy lights and the warmth of their love. Liam turned to Alara, his eyes shining in the firelight. "Alara," he began, his voice a little rough with emotion. "I've never truly felt like I belonged anywhere until I came to Oakhaven. Until I met you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box he had carved himself, intricate oak leaves etched into its surface. He opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring, a small sapphire nestled between two tiny oak leaf designs. "I want to build our life together here, in this town, in this home," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "I want to wake up to the smell of your baking and spend my days building a future with you. Alara, will you marry me?" Alara's heart swelled, tears blurring her vision. It wasn't a grand dramatic proposal, but it was perfectly them, quiet, heartfelt, built on a foundation of shared dreams and a deep, abiding love for Oakhaven and each other. The sapphire in the ring caught the firelight, a dazzling blue, mirroring the quiet strength and depth of his love. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Liam, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then pulled her into a tender, breathtaking kiss. It was a kiss that sealed their past, celebrated their present, and promised an eternity of shared joy. Their wedding was a reflection of their love story, intimate, warm, and deeply rooted in Oakhaven. It was held in the garden of their newly finished cottage, under the ancient oak trees, just as spring was beginning to bloom. The townspeople who had watched their love story unfold celebrated with them, bringing pies and casseroles, offering heartfelt wishes. Alara wore a simple, elegant ivory dress, and Liam, a tailored suit that somehow still managed to look perfectly natural on him. As they exchanged vows, promising to build a life filled with love, laughter, and endless cups of coffee, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the scene. Alara looked into Liam's eyes, seeing not just a future, but a home, a sanctuary, a love that would endure, strong and steady like the ancient trees around them. Years passed, bringing with them the gentle rhythm of a life well lived. Oakhaven Bakes became more than just a bakery. It was the vibrant heart of the town, a place where generations gathered, where stories were shared over steaming mugs and warm pastries. Alara, now Mrs. Alara Thorne, still greeted every customer with her gentle smile, her hands still instinctively knowing the feel of perfect dough. But now her heart was even fuller, brimming with a contentment she had once only dreamed of. Liam, her steadfast husband, had truly made Oakhaven his own. He became the town's go-to craftsman, his hands busy with projects that enriched the community, always finding time to add a new shelf to the bakery, or build a sturdy treehouse in their own backyard for the two bright-eyed children who now filled their cottage with joyful noise. Their cottage, the home Liam had built with his own hands and Alara's loving heart, was a haven of warmth and laughter. The scent of Alara's baking often mingled with the subtle, comforting smell of Liam's woodworking, a unique blend that was truly theirs. As the years unfolded, Alara would often sit on the porch swing of their cottage in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Liam's strong arm around her. The whispers of her heart, once so quiet and uncertain, had been not only heard, but answered with a love so profound, so steady, it had anchored her, finally, to the most beautiful chapter of all. In Oakhaven, the town she had once returned to with trepidation, she had found not just a legacy, but a life. And in Liam, she had found her forever home, built brick by brick, dream by dream, with unwavering love. Their story, like the finest bread, had risen beautifully, nourishing and comforting, forever baked into the heart of Oakhaven.